Hello, my friends. This is The Art of Prepping. I hope you guys are doing well today. So I just wanted to chat for a moment and just talk about some things that have been on my mind, and I'm sure it's on your mind to some degree as well. So if you're into preparedness and just being aware of what's going on in the world, you see that things are setting up for very negative potentials. And I just want to kind of expand upon that and just give you a few examples. And so I can't go into great detail because of the censorship on this platform. There are some topics that are off limits. I have tested those limits in recent weeks and found out for a fact that you cannot talk about certain things, or your videos will get deleted and you will get strikes upon your account. And that's what's happened to me. So I have to tread lightly unless I want to have some kind of negative outcome to the channel. And so I don't want the channel to be deleted, but at the same time, I want to speak freely. So there's a conflict right there. And that's why I'm not motivated to do many videos these days, because it's pretty pathetic here on YouTube of what you can't, what you can't say and the little that you can do. So what I can say, hopefully this doesn't get me into too much trouble, but let's just call it the medical situation that we're in. I think that we all know what I'm talking about here. So the medical situation that we're all going through, I think it's going to get much worse, and I believe that we're going to have another lockdown by the end of the year. I don't know when, but I think it's going to be by the end of the year. And or at least possibly at the time of this video in the next few months even. Okay, so we have that gives me a lot of motivation to prepare, and so that's what I've been doing lately. I've been preparing on a very high level, much more than normal, and just having great focus on trying to be as self-sufficient as possible. And I'm talking about a lot of different areas of preps. And just kind of looking at where I'm weak in my preps and really bolstering that. And I would encourage you to do the same. So there's a whole host of other reasons, not just the medical situation that we're in, that kind of causes me to pause and really have some concerns. I'm not fearful in the sense of like, oh, this is the end of the world. No, nothing like that. I try not to be fearful whatsoever. I just think that it's healthy to be concerned on a logical level. And that's what's going on here for me. I have concerns, but luckily, though, we can do things to mitigate a lot of these concerns. So that's what I've been doing. So what are some other things? Well, if you've been aware of the stock market over the past year and a half, you know that it's in record territory. In fact, yesterday, at the time of making this video, we have hit all-time highs on the S&P 500, and we're just a few points away on the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones. This will most likely continue to melt up in this parabolic move, and we're in this really epic bubble. We're in an epic bubble right now of equities. And so there is that potential in the very near future. Everybody has a different forecast out there. Who knows when it's going to happen? But I do follow some very good economists, and they're right most of the time. And they're collectively saying in the next 2 to 3 months, we'll probably have an epic bust cycle. And it could be anywhere from 60 to 85% of the equity market, the stock market gutted out. Just a massive collapse from where we are today. And it could be many years before we ever get back to the highs that we're at now. In fact, if you follow David Hunter, he's one of my favorite, gentlemen to kind of follow his forecast. He's very interesting. His analysis are very interesting. I think really on point. He's very, very accurate in his predictions. And David Hunter is saying it could be as much as 10 years to recover to the point that we are today in terms of just the valuations of equities. So there's something there to kind of be aware of. So we have market conditions that look kind of grim. We have medical situations unfolding. I mean, we have like monkeypox and other things that are kind of like popping up that could be potential issues, you know. Just a lot of fear being pushed from mainstream media. And there's a lot of, I can't really get into details on this either because I got, you know, in big trouble with YouTube by talking about this. But, you know, there's an aspect of this whole medical situation that we're in that could get kind of extreme. It already is to a large degree, but I'm talking about it can go a lot further. And I think you know what I'm talking about. And I wish I could be a lot more, you know, descriptive on this, but this is a platform that they micromanage every word and they censor you to the max. And I think at some point, just by saying that they censor you, they will censor you more. I think that's what's going to happen. If not, it's already probably happening. So I'll probably have to get to a point in time that I can't even call out these people because they'll just shut me down completely. And so what other kind of concerns are on the horizon that would prompt a person that's awake and that's aware of the world situation to be more prepared? Well, let me tell you, there's all kinds of tension between other countries and the U.S. I think we know who they are, some of the big players, right? At least China, Russia, Iran, and there's a whole host of others. And there's quite a few nation states that are kind of talking, you know, in the background about dropping the dollar completely. And there's quite a few nation states that don't want to have nothing to do with this. And just the positioning of the United States in the world is getting weaker and weaker. And we have very poor leadership. In my opinion, there really isn't any real leadership if you get down to it. And if you want to call it leadership, they're just driving us to the ground. So we have major problems here. And this whole global reset that is in works, it looks like it's moving at a pretty fast pace. The digital currencies that are being set up, all this emphasis on expanding the budget, inflating the currencies, all these massive spending bills, like this infrastructure bill. Who knows if it's going to pass, but I think they got it down to around 4 trillion, but it was a lot more. I think it was a lot more, like 8 to 10 trillion at one point, but they brought it down. But still, even if we pass 4 trillion for an infrastructure bill here in a few weeks, few months, that's insane. That's insane. We don't have 4 trillion to spend. That would all have to be borrowed, to my knowledge. And what does that do to the currency? Well, it just creates more and more inflation. And so it's just another tax. It's kind of a very subtle hidden tax. I mean, for people who are awake and see it, it's really obvious and it's not so subtle. But people they kind of wonder, why are the prices of things going up? Is it because of a supply and demand thing? Well, in some situations it can be. But in a lot of other situations, it's just because there's so much money floating around. It's because there's a problem with that, right? When you have so much money, then the money isn't worth like as it used to be worth. So you have basically a devaluation of the currency and it gets inflated. Is it hyperinflation yet? No. But there are a lot of things that are between 25 to 50% more than it used to be. That's actually very true. I know my average grocery bill now, when I get groceries, it's averaging between 20 to 25% more than it used to. That's a lot. I mean, it really adds up over time. And so it just depends on what industry that you're in, you know, that you're buying from. Because used cars went through a period just recently that it got really, really expensive. And, you know, it's coming down. Lumber went through that same phase. Lumber got really expensive and now it's coming down a lot. But, you know, you have some things subsidized by the government and some things not. You have supply and demand. You have all these storms. You know, the weather system is completely jacked up. And I can't get into a lot of details with this. This is stuff that's censored also. But is there weather manipulation going on, especially out in the west of our country here in the U.S.? Is there weather manipulation? Is this weather warfare? And what about China with all the flooding? I mean, they're calling it like the 1,000-year flood. I mean, it's so rare to have that kind of crazy flood. I I mean, massive destruction of their infrastructure all throughout different parts of China. I mean, there's tornadoes that are cutting through. I mean, I don't know if people even realize the weather systems are going completely berserk. Is this global warming? No, I don't believe that at all. I think that's all bunk. That's all political theater. And I can't even get into great details with that because I'll have Wikipedia pop up on the screen saying that, oh, fact check this and fact check that. I'm wrong in this. But in my opinion, this is not no global warming. This is probably man-made weather systems gone too far. And there could be weather wars too. There could be various countries fighting each other through manipulations through the atmosphere, creating different cold fronts, warm fronts, moving, precipitation around. And this is not unheard of. I mean, this is something that a lot of governments do on a regular basis to create rain for their crops, to force, the moisture and precipitation out of the clouds down so they can have, basically relief, for their farming and so forth. So what is going on? I mean, here in the West, we have major drought and ridiculous hot temperatures. And then in the eastern side of the country, we have massive rain and the temperatures aren't that bad. I mean, yes, it's summertime and it's warm. Don't get me wrong. I'm outside right now and it's pretty warm, but this is summertime. This is like the peak of summer and it's not bad. It's not bad at all for peak of summer. It's about what it should be. But you have countries, though, that are really getting hit hard, so what is going on? I mean, is there something also going on, though, that's outside of the earth that's manipulating us? Is the sun doing things that we're not being told? Are there celestial events going on? And this is kind of wrapping up, this whole thought of something isn't right. There's a lot of people saying that they just think that and feel even that there's just something ain't right, that we're not being told something. That the elites doing all this medical stuff, once again, I'm not going to get into it because it'll destroy my channel, but the medical problems that we have, are those set up by certain people? And if so, what is the end game? What's the end game here? Why do they want to get rid of so many people so quick? Is it because there's celestial threats? Is there something else going on? There's so many unanswered questions, right? There's so many unknown variables. I think we'll find out pretty soon, probably in the next few months to the next year range. We'll probably find out at least a lot more information, if not the answer to what is really going on. But I foresee in the near future a lot of people that won't survive from the medical threat that is present and some of those so-called solutions to the medical threat that we have currently. I find that we are in big trouble. We are in pretty deep trouble globally, at least, for probably the next year, maybe two. But I do believe, though, that if we can get through this, we're going to be stronger. Whoever survives is going to be a lot stronger. And of course, I'm totally wrong on all this. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying there's a lot of potential for this to happen. And so I've been, suggesting that we're going to probably have, for example, the stock market that's going to probably bust, and I've been talking about that for over a year now. And a lot of people have, though. I mean, it wasn't too early really to say that there was a potential for that. And now we're getting into such epic territory. The bubble is a lot bigger than anyone ever thought it was going to go. I mean, it's pretty, like I said, epic. I mean, it really is. It's like historical. Literally, it's historical what is going on. This is going to go in history books about how far the market melted up in this parabolic, run never seen before in history, to stock valuations that are completely insane, and it's one of those things that you really want to be aware of so that you can position yourself so that you don't get burned on the backside when all this stuff comes down, or at least settles in some way. Even if we don't have an epic melt out, like complete bust cycle, even if it's something that's more mild, like a 25 to 50% instead of an 80% or 85, even if it's something like that, which is still pretty intense, it's going to really do a real number on a lot of people, right? in a lot of businesses, corporations, all that. It's going to affect everyone. So just be aware and understand how to mitigate risk within your own portfolio if you have one. And of course, in your everyday life. So more than ever, in closing, it makes a lot of sense to put food back. And this is so elementary, and it's in thought. It's so basic, really, right? But so few people do this. Honestly, so few people do this. And don't think that a couple weeks is going to do it for you. You really do need, at this particular point, in my opinion, to push a lot further than just a couple of months. And so you just do the best you can, and go from there. But stack food, have some water filters, have some water put back too. Have a good amount of water stored. Have some decent medical kits. Understand the basics of trauma care, wound management. Understand these things. Have some kind of backup system to power basic devices that you would really want to have. So for a lot of people, it's a solar charger, right? It could be a portable solar charger. It could be one that is compact enough that you could just put out in the sun and then put it back in your garage or shed or barn or whatever. So it could be various types to charge a battery, for example, and then have that battery. So like maybe throughout the night, you could use it to power lights or to run a refrigerator. That's why I have a very small refrigerator, and it's done on purpose. So it's really easy to run off a small, like, solar powered system. And you can run that 24 hours on a very small system. If it's just a couple hundred watts, you can run it pretty much all day, no problem. So understand what your power needs are, your energy needs, to be able to recharge your devices like a radio. If you have, headlamps and flashlights and your phone, for example, understand what your needs are. And if you're someone like me and you love your Instant Pot, you like to cook in the Instant Pot, I'm completely addicted to my Instant Pot. I probably use it at least once a day, sometimes twice. If you're like me and you want to have some power to use your Instant Pot during the apocalypse, you're going to need power. And so just make sure you have enough reserve power and really investigate how you're going to store this power. Don't just buy any battery, and just certainly don't just have one battery, And I'm currently working on that more myself to build my capability to generate more power. It's not the cheapest thing to do, but the prices have come down dramatically in the last few years for solar panels in particular. Maybe you're not into that. Maybe where you live, there's no sun or very little. Every place has some sun, I guess, at some point. But maybe it's just where you live, there's a lot of shade, or you're just not getting a lot of direct sunlight. Maybe you need to store a lot of fuel and have a gas-powered generator. But even then, it's going to be very difficult to store weeks and months of it. But you could do it. It's possible. You may have to have several different systems. But don't forget energy production. And just another example, there's so many different categories. I'm just giving you some highlights here just to kind of start out, just to get thinking if you haven't got going yet. But certainly have some reference materials to help you solve problems if there's no internet, if there's no power grid. You're not going to be able to jump on Google or whatever search engine that you use and find information within seconds. You're going to need reference material, which is going to be hard copies, like it's called books. There are people I know that have pretty much no books in their home, but you're going to want books. You want reference material. And you don't have to make it all serious either. You want all your basics covered. You definitely want some good survival manuals and how-to manuals and all this. But you want some entertainment too. You want to have a couple books set aside that you would love to read, but you're holding off, and you're just going to reserve it for the apocalypse so that you have something to look forward to besides your meals, right? And whoever you're with. Hopefully you have some type of companionship. But there are people out there that live alone. And so you're going to have to figure out how you're going to spend your time. And especially if you're alone, you're going to have things, because a lot of people who live alone, they use technology to distract themselves, to entertain themselves, and so forth, right? So it's very important for mental health to have something that you can do that you enjoy. And that really goes for everyone too, though. It's not just for people who live alone. If you have families and so forth, you certainly, especially if you have kids, you want to put some things back for the kids. Maybe like new games and new toys that they don't know about, just so they have some kind of surprise, something fun that they can experience during the apocalypse, And so it's not all gloom and doom. We don't want gloom and doom every day. In fact, you probably want to find ways to not think about the gloom and doom, and to make a schedule, a daily schedule, to have routines. That's the one thing about, in my lifetime, studying about psychology and mental health and so forth. And when I used to be a counselor, this is something that we did on a regular basis with people, was to instill routines. And it gives you structure, and it calms your nerves. It makes things more predictable, and it relaxes the mind and the body, because things are predictable and you don't have a bunch of new surprises every day. You don't have a shock to the system. And while things can go wrong, of course, and things do, you have the propensity to feel like that there is some kind of consistency on a daily basis. So you try to wake up at the same time and go to bed at the same time every day, as much as possible. You have certain times of the day you eat, and some time of the day you work. Sometime of the day you have fun, and basically you have a schedule. You don't have to make it super rigid. In fact, I would advise not to make it super rigid, but have a general timeline that, okay, normally you try to you read at this time of the day, or at least you give yourself an option that if you want to read, you can. Maybe you don't want to read one day. You want to go out and go for a jog or something, or lift weights or something. Then do that. But giving yourself some options, but not too many, and having some flexibility, but yet being on a schedule, or at least to have some consistency, can really be beneficial for mental health. And in conclusion, here finally, I just want to say this. Whatever happens in the near future, or the far off future, we try to take things as it comes. Because sometimes things seem really bad at first, until we get more information, we find out that it's not so bad. And so just for example, this whole monkeypox. I mean, they're just starting to talk about it, that there's potentially hundreds of people that have been exposed and infected possibly, and all this. And I'm going to keep up on this information for myself at least, and just see where this goes. But it may go nowhere. So instead of getting all worked up about monkeypox or whatever else that they throw out there in the news, give it a little bit of time and see how things work its way through the system. Most of the time, things are not as bad as they sound. So there's always the possibility, though, that some things are worse than they sound. And so what we've seen in terms of the response to this so-called medical situation that we're all going through right now, it does look like things are going to probably get a lot worse than it gets better. Let me just say that one more time. It'll probably just get a lot worse than it gets better, because of the intentions of those behind all this. So I do see, though, that there will probably be a large pushback at some point, and hopefully in the near future, by the citizens of the world. We're already seeing it in a lot of places in Europe. Large gatherings. We're seeing large protest. But I'm not seeing that here in the U.S. I think, though, it could happen that if they continue to deploy various measures to so-called protect us when it's not, then we may have to protest, and we may have to just be in defiance of whatever their tyranny, whatever that they don't want us to do. And a lot of times it's just having our basic freedoms. And so the government should not be able to tell us how to live our lives. What we have to wear, what we should wear, they should not be able to tell us crap. And so if you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear the mask. If you don't want the jab, don't get the jab. I think the most informed people out there know the dangers that are lurking by wearing a mask, getting the jab, going along with all the groupthink, not questioning the mainstream media, accepting certain people as God, like Fauci, Biden, and many others. There's a very creepy, unsettling, normalizing activity that's going on right now in the world, especially here in the U.S., that people are just dealing with and trying to find a way to accept what is going on. And we don't have to accept all this. We can say no. We can say that this is not acceptable. We can say that we want our life back and that we're going to live the way we want to live. We want to live free, and that we're going to live free. So at some point, it doesn't matter what the politicians or some kind of official says, that when it's obvious that it violates our rights, it's not scientific, and that only more people are getting injured because of it than helped, at some point we have a duty to say no. You guys take care. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your support. We'll catch you later.